Hello, my name's Rachel and welcome back to the channel. So today I am going to be sharing with you an exciting video on a fund that I am personally invested in and have been so pleased with the performance, and that is the Baillie Gifford Long-Term Global Growth Fund. What a mouthful. So before I decided to invest in this fund, I went away and read all the information I could about it just to do my due diligence and check that it was a fund that I wanted to be invested in. But for me, it ticked all of the boxes. So it is a growth fund, it is a global fund, and its aim is to beat the FTSE All World Index by 2.5% per annum. And let me tell you, since its inception, it has smashed that target and done so well. So I'll be sharing all of those figures with you in today's video and some more information that you might need before going away and doing your own research if this is a fund that you want to be invested in. At the moment, I am currently invested in 5 different Baillie Gifford investments. Those range from funds to trusts, and this is one of the investments that I'm currently holding a large proportion of my money in my investment ISA. So when I was reading through all the documents again this morning before I was doing this video, I read a Baillie Gifford quote that really summed up this fund well. It says, "At Baillie Gifford, we ask ourselves one important question. Where are the most exciting investment opportunities over the long term going to be?" You'll see from the top 10 holdings in this fund that they have certainly got a lot of exciting stocks which look to have really good opportunities into the future. Now we will go into the portfolio in a little bit more detail later in the video and talk about the top 10 holdings and then also the asset allocation as well. But first of all, I wanted to give you past performance figures. Now, past performance is not always indicative of future performance, but it's very interesting to see how a fund has done historically. This fund was launched back in April 2017, so I'm going to give you full year figures for 2018, 2019 and 2020. So looking at their 2018 figures, this fund achieved a return of 3.3%. And you might be thinking, that doesn't sound that great. However, in that year, the index, the FTSE All World, actually lost minus 3.4% in 2018. So although often there's a lot of talk about investing in index funds and that being potentially the more safe, less volatile route, which it is, in 2018, this actively managed fund did actually beat the index. And although that return doesn't sound as good as some of the returns I'm going to give you now, it's still a positive return compared to a negative return that the FTSE All World saw. And moving on to 2019, the returns for this fund were 29.9%, which is fantastic when you compare that to the benchmark of the FTSE All World, which is 22.3%. Then moving on to 2020, which was a ridiculous year for this fund. It has performed exceptionally well in 2020 because of innovative stock picking and choosing stocks that particularly focus on moving online, which became very important in 2020. Anyway, the 2020 returns for this fund were 95.6%. The FTSE All World returned 13%. So as you can see, every single full year since inception, this fund has absolutely beaten its benchmark. So very quickly, let's talk about fees, because I know they're really important, particularly if you're considering investing in a managed fund versus a passive fund. So there's no entry or exit charge. The only ongoing charge is 0.64% and there is no performance fee. So for me personally, 0.64% is not a particularly high charge for an actively managed fund that is beating its benchmark. And I was actually reading Baillie Gifford's value assessment report, and I really like this quote. It says, "Put simply, is the investor better off than if they had invested in a passive equivalent?" And this is definitely the case with this fund. So by investing in the Baillie Gifford Long-Term Global Growth Fund, at this point, you are certainly better off than you would be had you invested your money in a passive fund. So I'm going to move over to the Fidelity website. I actually have a Fidelity investment ISA, but you can actually access this information even if you don't have an account with Fidelity. But I really like to look at this tool when I'm thinking about investing in a certain fund or trust. So looking at the performance, so if you had have invested £1,000 into this Baillie Gifford fund on the 30th of April 2017, that £1,000 on the 31st of October 2021 would now be worth £3,573.75. had you invested that £1,000 in an equivalent benchmark. So the benchmark for comparison that Fidelity's website is using is the Global Large Cap Growth Equity. So your £1,000 would now be worth £1,811.51. So you can see that from investing in the Baillie Gifford fund, you've made significantly more money than you would have made had you invested in the equivalent index. So let's get stuck into the portfolio and asset allocation for this fund. So it is invested 98.97% in stocks and 1.03% in cash. No bonds within this fund. And then, as I said, this is a nice, diverse global fund. So you have got 56.85% in the United States, 20.79% invested in Asia emerging, then the Eurozone is 17.67%, Canada 3.41%, and then the Asia developed market 1.28%. So market classification, 79.21% is developed and 20.79% is emerging. So let's move down and have a look at those top 10 holdings now. So as you will see, a lot of these companies are very innovative, forward-thinking companies that have done very, very well in the last year. So the number one holding for this fund is Moderna, then Amazon, Tesla, ASML Holdings, Nvidia, Illumina, Meituan, Tencent Holdings, Keyring or Kering SA, and then finally Shopify, which is probably making up a lot of that Canadian country allocation there. So those are just the top 10 holdings. However, this fund will probably be holding between 30 and 60 different stocks at one time. So yes, you certainly do not have the diversity that you would have had you invested in the FTSE All World or had you invested in, say, the S&P 500. However, you are getting a nice level of concentrated growth stocks that at the moment are outperforming the market. One thing that I felt was important to note here when talking about the portfolio is that I also hold the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust, which is also managed by Baillie Gifford. Now, this trust does have some quite similar holdings in its top 10. So, for example, they both hold Moderna, Illumina, ASML, and Tesla in their top 10 holdings. So if you are looking at making this investment and you already are invested in the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust, and you might want to take a look and think, does it make sense for me to be invested in both of these investments? And if so, why does that make sense to me at this point in time? As I said, I am invested in both of these investments, but I just wanted to point out that there are some similarities within the portfolio. So very quickly, I just wanted to give you the 3-year annualized returns. I do not have 5-year annualized returns for this fund because it was only established in 2017. So 3-year annualized returns for this fund are 42.16%, which is fantastic. And that is versus the Global Large Cap Growth Equity of 20.06%. And then finally, I want to give you the risk and reward indicator for this fund. Now, before we go into this, I am comfortable with investing in funds that have higher levels of risk because I do want to hold these investments for the long term. So for me, I will be holding onto this fund for 5 years or more. So I am comfortable with that risk level. However, because this is a riskier fund, it will probably be more volatile, and if you are looking to just invest for the next 6 months or 2 years, then it might be worth you going away and having a think about whether this is the right investment for you. So the risk and reward indicator table demonstrates where the fund ranks in terms of its potential risk and reward. The higher the rank, the greater the potential reward, but the greater the risk of losing money. It is based on past data and may change over time and may not be a reliable indicator of the future risk profile of this fund. So this risk and reward indicator goes all the way from 1 being the least risky and potentially lower rewards, all the way up to 7 being the most risky and potentially the higher rewards. So the risk level for the Baillie Gifford Global Growth Investment Fund is 6. So it's right up on that higher level of risk and reward, well, potential reward and potential risk. So that is definitely worth considering. If you're looking at investing in this fund, you will have to consider that it is on that higher level of risk. So for me, as I said, I'm going to stay invested in this fund for the long term. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it does this year, particularly because it had such a strong 2020. And to be honest, I don't expect that to be replicated this year. So it will be interesting to see how the stocks that they have in this portfolio perform this year. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know I'm a big fan of Baillie Gifford investments, both their funds and their trusts, but I am keen to diversify my portfolio a little bit more. So if there's any funds or trusts you think I should be looking at, then please do pop them in the comments down below. I wish you all the very best with your investments. Please always do your own research, and thank you so very much for watching. Bye bye.